Hi, guys, and welcome to this very special discussion here, this conference. This is the Grand Festival Gaming here in France, and we are delighted to have many people watching us, hopefully online, and especially three amazing guests. You can see them here on screen. I am in presence of greatness today. I am with Troy Severson and George Wu from Intel, as well as Craig Levine from ESL. First of all, guys, I'd like to say a huge thank you for taking the time to join us today and to welcome you here on this amazing panel, this one of a kind panel. And so today we'll be discussing many things, hopefully, but more specifically, we'll be discussing this 20-year collaboration, this 20-year partnership between ESL and Intel, two, two masters of their industries. And we'll be discussing on how innovation and technology has shaped and formed the world of esports that we live in and that we thrive in. So before we really get started and get going into this, guys, you've been in this industry more or less for the last 2 decades. All of you, whether with Intel or ESL or other companies, you've been here from the start. Do you have any thoughts, or do you have any memories that you'd like to share with us? Do you have anything that stands out? Any specific moments of those 20 years that you would like to share? If can we have maybe Troy
Y-
start off?
Yeah, I can start if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
okay,
All
go
right.
for it, George.
Okay. So, over 2 decades. There's just a lot of memorable experience, but I think the ones that really come to mind are, where we host the venues that we hosted IEM. For instance, in China, we partnered with a Happy Valley amusement park, and when we showed up during setup, it looked like it was like 72 hours before the actual the park goes live, and it looked when we showed up, it looked like there were like 2 to 3 months more to compare. There was no parking lot. A lot of the entrances weren't even complete. We were setting up PCs in dust, so we had face masks trying to work around the crew that were constructing the building that we're in. It was just crazy. That's just one big one, right? The other one I was definitely that I still laugh to today. In the early days, talking about the venues again, we used to lead with the Intel brand because ESL and esports weren't really well commodities in outside of gaming, and so to forge these partnerships with these tournament organizers where we would get some economy of scale with the space and all that, we would always lead with Intel. Because being Intel, the big brand coming in at your show, they saw that value as well as the international reach that ESL was able to deliver. So those are the two, but there's a lot of really funny moments that really can't be communicated online because I actually saw these guys grow up, from young men to now married with kids and so on.
Yeah, 20 years has taken us a lot of different places. But for me, I think the fondest memory is still anytime you walk into an arena, right? Anytime you do something new and you push the boundary of what it is. And for me, first time in Spodek Arena in Katowice, and just really soaking in the idea that there's 10,000 screaming fans watching and loving esports is just a goosebump moment that gets me every time. But that first time of doing it was super memorable and something I'll never forget.
I think that's it for me too. Is noting that contrast. Very early on, I went to some of the early events, and then actually took another job at Intel for a while. But going to those early events where you were in like a hotel with pop-up tables, and you were arranging drapery around the tables for the 10 people who might be able to see under that table that we're watching, and then to go from there to, as Craig said, you walk into Spodek Arena, or you walk into actually the whole festival environment in like IEM Katowice with 170,000 people. You're like, wow, things have really come a long way and changed dramatically.
It's interesting that you seem to all agree that the events are the main thing here. And it's funny how going back 20 years, there's a huge difference. But even going back just 10 years, it feels like in 10 years or even 5 years, we've changed so much and the esport industry has changed so much. Do you all go back into events every time with that same enthusiasm and the same anticipation, walking into that huge arena and seeing the people?
Yeah, for me, I mean, growing up a sports fan, it's that's what competition's about, and I think really with gaming, that's what community's about. And right, every time for me, as you step in, either whether it was as a player or as a fan, right, you're always coming together and meeting people that you were interacting with on Discord or on Reddit or in IRC or playing together through Steam or anything. So it's always that just very social moment where you were coming together with friends to really celebrate that pastime. And for me, that's what I love most about what this is, right? Doing really great things with great people. And the events are still the way that most comes to life.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I second Craig's point there. I mean, I remember the days where we're just launching these tournaments and there was no audience, right? And ESL was always pushing and pushing and pushing, like put some seats out there. And we were always arguing like, hey, only people are going to sit out there are the teams and managers, right? And going, fast forward now, and there were key inflection points, right? You had Twitch coming in 2011. That really changed the landscape, and then us doing Katowice like Craig mentioned earlier, seeing that filled up was just breathtaking, and just gave you chills as a marketer, right? That passion that we had, the vision that we had, and bringing it to life was just something that is can't be explained. It's just awesome.
Okay. Well, you guys, Intel and ESL, have been together really doing these events for so long. And I mean, for me, the IEMs is a great example of this. The Intel Extreme Masters have become a hallmark of what is and what we should expect in an amazing event. Have you guys felt that working together so long, you've been able to build things or learn things from each other? How has that changed the way you approach your respective fields?
Let's start.
I'll jump in here, Craig, because I think the technology piece of it has been a huge learning. And I'll say this as coming from my educational background is in broadcasting journalism, and so I was used to seeing these huge broadcasting studios, etc. And that's one of the things that really struck me is about the learnings that we've done together. Is it's not just about the PC game. That when you walk into these events, even when you're doing these events virtually, like we are right now, the control centers and the technology behind the scenes is so amazing, and how it's evolved is so amazing. And what we've learned about guaranteeing like the quality of service and the interactivity with the audiences, and that is not, that's totally separate from just, we're playing a game on a PC, but it's that behind the scenes technology that's just amazing now. And I think that's something I feel like we've really evolved together, we've perfected together, and we've really learned a lot about how to deliver that service together.
Yeah, when you look back on 20 years working together, exactly. So what we've done with esports and done it together has been creating something and pioneering something new that didn't exist before, and looking at sports and drawing inspiration, looking at broadcast and drawing inspiration, and trying to layer that all on top of this, what had been a very consumer at home experience of playing video games over the internet. So it's constantly pushing boundaries and constantly innovating on how we bring to life, live shoutcasting, in the late 90s, early 2000s, before video streaming, right? Then Twitch was one of the biggest streaming platforms for live content out there. And IEM was the biggest and earliest content that drove massive audience at scale there. And you layer that all on top, and then the backdrop of it, right, George likes to remind us, Intel taught us as ESL how to grow up as a company, how to work with a large global brand, how to build out the business of what now has become, right, this phenomena, has been just some of the many ways that I think we've built this over time.
Yep. And and obviously ESL taught us esports, right? How to engage with the community, working with the digital media, especially when Twitch launched in 2011. Our focus was really offline, right? And we were hosting these events at trade shows and trying to get people in our booth, and we having something that was different, having people compete in a LAN setting. People came up to our booth and it's like, what are you guys doing? It wasn't coined esport, it was professional gaming. And then when 2011 came, we just changed our strategy because we saw the global reach. So we really learned, and there was nothing to benchmark. So there was a lot of trial and error. And luckily we started early, and we were able to make mistakes and not be too costly for both companies.
So from hearing you guys, it sounds like 2011 with the arrival of Twitch really was a turning point. Were there other turning points, or was that like the biggest thing? Is there anything else in those 20 years that came around that really changed the way you work?
Also, right, the launch of League of Legends, was really the first big game in the Western market that was free to play. And I think what that started to do was change the way that game developers and publishers interact with their community. It was no longer about selling them a new version of Call of Duty every 12 months, but engaging with this audience. And esports has proven to be a strong retention and engagement tool for now their core business. So out of that, let's say, aha moment now, you see so many games being built now with competitive balance built in mind, spectator tools, and what that creates is this large stable of games and communities ultimately that are playing competitively and interested in esports. So the self-publishing and democratization of content through Twitch and YouTube and social media, and the combination then of this strong pipeline of games now that are building these features, I think has what's created so much growth for esports over the last few years.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, that I really think these collaboration tools, like right now we're on Discord, but the fact that gamers were able to get into those games and have their teammates in really great collaboration capabilities with sound and with voice and with being able to share stats and strategy tools, those collaboration tools really helped open the door too, because it really did make it like you're playing with your community, you're there with your friends. It made it so much more engaging than the early days.
So looking back on those 20 years, if you were now given the same setup you had then, how would you react?
It would have been amazing. I mean, it's sort of funny, but I've got the silver hair here going on, but I still play today. But I even joke because it even goes further back than that for me. My nephew was actually one of the very first StarCraft pro gaming champions in December of 1998. So I've been playing, competing, and following it since then. But like Craig said, there have been so many inflection points where new technologies came in. In the early days, it was just matching. It was how do you even find competitors to play with who aren't people that you already know. And so those matching systems then gave way to these leagues and ladders, and then it's all built from there. And so seeing that evolution, I mean, if we had these tools back then, yeah, and the internet was more robust, it would have. I mean, that's part of it too, right?
So you guys have been here for a long time, watching how esports has evolved and watching how innovations have evolved. How do you think the two interlink? Do you think that esports is born thanks to the innovations that were there and provided support for the esports scene to develop? Or do you think that the innovations had to follow, had to try and keep up to be able to offer what the consumer, offer what the player wanted to be able to play? Or do you think there is a more subtle link between the two?
That George,
you've been around the longest.
Well, I mean, my point of view is that technology, especially in the early days, really helped shape esports. And now I would say fast forward now, I would say it's more balanced where the evolution of esports experience have really, we are adapting our technology to it. Some of the early examples of some of the early technologies and what we helped with the overall tournament was, the swappable SSDs. I mean, in the past, when we didn't have the swappable SSD, where we assign the SSD to a player, where they come in, do all their settings one time, and they carry this hard drive with them from PC to PC. So they don't need to do the setup. So from a production time, that usually took about 90 minutes before the pre-SSD swappable. And when we start implementing that technology in the swappable bays, it cut down time to like 15 minutes. So yeah, huge difference. I mean, that's just one example, right?
And I would agree. I think in the beginning, esports, let's say, followed a lot of what technology was, and in a unique way now, I think esports has become more popular and really represented, right, digitized content and define this in a way that was different than traditional sports and entertainment and even media, where now I think it is, as George said, right, much more balanced to it, where there's a discussion about what are the needs of esports, in some cases being the leading indicator to what we're seeing in other content or other platforms. And look no further than Twitch and the interactivity. And right, this is a generational change of how people interact that was led by esports that I think now technology in some ways was figuring out how to serve, and now that bleeds through in other content as well. So I think it's been very complementary through that, but more balanced now.
Okay, Troy, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
No, I think these guys covered it well. I do think it is like, I mean, it's been like a zipper, right? There's things that we've needed. There's technologies come along, and you're looking at ways to apply them, and it just fits together, right? I mean, it's been a great, build.
Yeah, I guess just seeing us, as we mentioned, as you guys mentioned on Discord now, just shows how much technology and gaming is interlinked, even outside of the high-end PC you may have or the latest next-gen console that you may have. Even outside of that, we've acquired or developed or latched on to tools as gamers that enable us to, as you guys say, communicate better and eventually, hopefully, game better, although that's not maybe my case necessarily. But in most cases, we try to use technology. You mentioned stats, and we try to use technology to be able to improve our game. It's something we've seen in the sports community, traditional sports community, for 50, 60 years now, and it's come to esports in a very real way. And looking at the technologies we now have, are there technologies that you guys are looking to as thinking this is something that could be huge for our industry? And if so, which are these technologies, and why do you think they could impact us so massively?
Well, I would love to jump in first here because I want to steal some thunder from Craig and George. But I think some of the things I'm really looking forward to are things like the anti-cheat and the anti-toxicity. And as those technologies develop, and we are working on those together, I think it's really important for the health and continued growth of gaming and esports, because we want to continue to welcome new players. We want to continue to welcome new ideas of competition. And I think the anti-toxicity, anti-cheat are going to play key roles in keeping it healthy, welcoming new people in. It's been like, it's hard. When you were a new player playing, League of Legends for the first time, you didn't know the roles, you didn't know about laning and all that kind of things to start. And, it was tough sometimes being a new player in that years ago. But so I really do look forward to, making sure that our gaming and esports, industry and ecosystem is welcoming to new players. And that's how we'll continue the growth and welcoming to new content and new levels of competition.
And I would add on that, right, just performance overall, whether it's performance of the network and the infrastructure, whether it's performance of your local gaming, system that you've got, right? What you get on a PC is an unmatched richness and immersiveness that you still can't replicate elsewhere. But to continue to have faster technology and the local and the interactivity of it just creates richer, more engaging experiences, which I think brings you more into the social element of what this is and right how it comes to life for fans, not just from players then, but as consumers of the fandom, whether it's content, whether it's connectivity to your communities on the go, your friends, whatever that might be. It's really bleeding through in so many different ways.
Okay, yeah, indeed. We've seen, technology has really come into the home of every person here. Every gamer has an amazing piece of technology, even in their pockets most of the time. And we see that it's really shaped the way we communicate, as you guys say. But not just that, it's shaped the way we portray this gaming life of ours. And we see more and more people stream from home. They're not just playing; they're also streaming. And it's no longer just the big influencers. Everyone enjoys nowadays, from time to time, being able to share their content, even if it's to a very small group of friends. And sharing this content has become really easy thanks to technology. So in this industry, you guys, I'm sure you talk a lot about big events and big live streams and things. But how has this new emergence of the home entertainer, how has this changed your perception and the way you talk to the broader audience? as ESL and as Intel, as big companies that you are?
Start with it, George.
Well, I just think that first of all, esports is more prominent now, right? First of all, so more people know about esports, so that's half the battle. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest challenges in the past is people explaining what it was. Now we have it's advanced. We are, we develop different tier messaging that cater to a broader mainstream audience, and you'll see more of that from Intel in 21.
So lots to look forward to then.
Yep.
And I'll just tack on to that and say, I mean, I think, as George said, I'd run into a lot of people who you'd say esports, and they'd kind of get that look on their face like, what does that mean? And honestly, again, with what's, current events in the world, you've seen a lot more transition between traditional sports and esports, right? When F1 shut down, when FIFA shut down for a while, right? We all of a sudden had esports tournaments being competed by traditional sports personalities. We had the drivers from F1 doing competitions. And so I think that helped people sort of understand that, hey, these things are sort of like interesting parallel, and that they started to understand a little bit better what esports was. And I think that's actually helped with getting a little bit more, more exposure. And also just not just the pro esports players, but people playing and competing at an amateur level or a collegiate level. And that's really, I think, where we're going to see a lot of growth in the years to come.
Yep.
Well, George and Troy, you both mentioned the way people perceive esports. And obviously, this year has been quite dramatic in the way people perceive esports. But before 2020, what were the biggest things you were fighting against? What were maybe the biggest preconceptions, and how did you address those?
I think.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think people didn't separate esports and just sort of PC gaming, right? And so there was probably this vision of, gamers sitting in front of a PC by themselves playing games, and people saying, how does that really make esports? They didn't understand sort of, again, the full breadth of what the competitive environment of the league environments that ESL has implemented in those arena events. They just didn't even have a concept that there was, organized leagues, organized competitions, that it was thousands and millions of fans, actually spectating. And I think that was the misconception. And so again, by being able to show the transition that we have in this last year, I think people have gotten that definition quite a bit, now better understood.
Yeah. And let me add, in some countries like in PRC, one of the biggest challenges for me when we were doing the IEMs in China was the unhealthiness of gaming, right? The government was very concerned that the youth were basically spending way too much time on gaming and really less time on education, which was a big thing. And we got to, obviously the role models are the parents, and we're here, we provide them outlets for their passion, and there has to be a balance in life. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges in the beginning, was getting people, the governments of countries to understand that esports, esports provided other avenues for careers, not just gaming, right? From game designers to streaming to broadcast. There's so many things that go beyond just gaming that you can learn from competing in esports.
And the power of it, I think, is, as we talk about the shifting perception, it's generational in the sense that, right, there's a generation now, the people that have grown up with video games, us here on this call, that enjoy video games with their children and will pass that passion down and connect with them through that media in the same way that traditional sports or theaters or music or fill in the blank was for generations before us. And I think that creates that broader understanding, as Troy describes, right? His nephew, I think, right, the StarCraft pro in the late 90s, probably not an experience that Troy himself got to experience being on the receiving end of that. So, right, all these things I think are what's building, and what's so exciting about esports is that it's all still so early, of just based off the growth of the broader video game entertainment media of where this all is going.
Well, if we can take a slightly indirect route to a different question, as you're mentioning children and being parents, as parents yourselves, what would be your recommendation to other parents who want to be able to enjoy a healthy gaming experience with their children? It's
I
a
mean,
And
very
I
good
can,
question, yeah.
go ahead,
George,
Troy.
George, you
I've
want
been
to jump in on this one? George, jump in first.
as a parent. I mean, obviously, I think it's beyond. I mean, I love to come. This is something for like me and my son do together now. You know, in the past, I mean, as these kids grow up, they start as they get older, they want to be more independent, and this is a thing for me to actually do something with my son and play StarCraft 2. That's my game. And he tries to teach me other titles like League of Legends and all those things, and I try to find time. So it's more of a family time that I use it for. And and I promote it. I mean, obviously I'm in gaming, but I see there's a lot of outlets where my sons are meeting friends across the talking about the social piece, right? He has a lot of friends that he has never seen before, and then they're the closest friends, more closer than friends that he actually went to school with here in the state. So
Yeah, and I would echo what George said. For me, it was a great connector. For me, I have a son who's now 22, and for me, the esports and the gaming was really almost critical because it allowed us to connect, and it allowed him to connect with again a lot of his peers and actually people who were outside of his peer group, and some of them ended up being his role models. And for me, for my son, gaming really became a pathway to his now chosen vocation, which definitely because he was interested in PCs, he was interested in gaming, he went the route of computer science. He's now fully employed, and working for a very large software company that may make OSs. So it really was vital to his not only the fun, but also in sort of shaping his career path towards a very valuable career.
So we're talking about esports here. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about things that have evolved incredibly fast, and we've seen. I mean, we've seen teams, we've seen players come up, rise up from basically people didn't know them before, and the next year they're gone. And the same thing in a sense for tournaments. Every year they have to be bigger and better, stronger. My question for you guys is: how do we safeguard what we've made? How do we keep what we've built and use those as the building blocks of what's to come? How do we make sure that we safeguard our history as pioneers of esports, or your history as pioneers of esports for the years and the generations to come?
I think it's how do you create how do you extend the fandom beyond the event, right? Something we think a lot, right? It's a passion point, as you could sense from all of our voices here. So, right, how do you use technology? How do you use new media? How do you use new platforms now to celebrate this on a day by day, minute by minute kind of basis? So it's not something that you go into an event for once a year or twice a year or 4 times a year even, but it's something that you're interacting and engaged, and it's all about community. And then using these new media, these new social media platforms to celebrate that and live it every day. So I think the way that you protect it, right, is simply by living it and celebrating it every day. Much like we do, and the storytelling around it gets stronger, the fandom gets stronger, the interest that you have in the heroes and villains of it, the experiences yourself, new teammates, I think are what makes it so exciting.
yeah,
And I do think I'm just going to try to build a little bit on what Craig said there, but it is so important too and I'm again, a personal experience was I got to meet Jordan Nothing Gilbert. He does some work with Intel, obviously a very well-known CS:GO player. And it struck me as how important and how invested Jordan was in building that community and continuing that community, that he said, I'm getting I'm getting long in the tooth now. I'm 28. I'm over the hill really for competitive gaming. But he really wanted to go back and manage teams and manage younger gamers and bring them along. And I think that's key too, is how the people who get involved in esports become the role models, become the mentors for the future. And that's super important as well.
That's a
Yeah.
very good point.
Yeah, I
George,
mean,
do
I
you want
am.
to
I
add
mean,
anything?
well, I am. You're talking about the Intel Extreme Masters. You have 2 generations of players out there, right? And a lot of leagues out there are just starting their first generation. And for us, it's really continues to build on that community and delivering that, the exclusive competitions, those memorable gaming experience and innovative product offerings. That's obviously Intel is always innovating, and we want to make sure that the community understands that the value of these products that we're delivering to them.
That's the history, that heritage that George spoke to is a great point, right? Something like Intel Extreme Masters, the longest running esports circuit competition out there, the longest running champion that you've had. And you, right, think how valuable today, I don't know, video footage is of the first Super Bowl, right? Or an early Olympics or whatever it might be. And you can't recreate that overnight. But that we've been building on it. And right in the IEM trophy, it's got every winner's name etched into history. I think celebrates that and makes it that much more aspirational for new players coming up. So that's some of the ways to your point, right, of how we commemorate this and celebrate it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's a very interesting point that you mentioned, Troy, about becoming role models for the next generations, obviously as parents, but also and foremost for us, at least through our work and through what we've done and sharing those experiences. We've had some very interesting experiences lately with current events. How do you think this has changed the way we're going to approach next year? I mean, we've been given the opportunity, dare I say, we've been forced to innovate. And how do we build from this innovation? What have you guys learned from this year?
I'll
Well,
start. I mean,
yes,
go ahead,
Craig.
Troy, please.
No, go ahead. You got it, Craig. Take it.
Yeah, right. The expression's never waste a good crisis, and right, I think this has just really opened it up for esports a little bit, for us to look at the best practices of what this is, to take advantage that our community, our experience is inherently digital, right, inherently global with what it is was discussed earlier, right? We didn't go dark when FIFA went dark and you couldn't fill arenas, but we kept playing. So, right, I think what we've learned now is a new way to create interactivity, a new way to focus on the integrity, as Troy had spoken to earlier, to make sure we don't lose that as competitors at the essence of what sport is in competition, but also reflect how, again, we celebrate this passion and extend beyond an event or a competition. And now it's about how do we take these lessons going forward, building stronger, more digital relationships with fans, to accelerate the growth of esports.
And I just building off of what Craig said, I think we have a great opportunity in front of us where, we talked about the energy and excitement around the arena event. Okay, but if we can't do arena events, how do we bring that energy and excitement? What technology will that require? What changes in technology will that require so that we can essentially do things like, if you can't get together with your friends in person, how do you do it digitally and get that and capture some of that same excitement, the same energy? So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to look at the tools out there, to look at the technology and say, what new things do we get to develop now that are going to make it as maintain that excitement, maintain that energy. And as Craig said, that engagement, not just, between organizations and the viewers and players, but between the players themselves. If I want to jump on and watch a CSGO tournament with my son, who's, doesn't live in the same city, can I do that? Can we have a video connection? Can we have a live Discord chat while we're watching together? So I think it gives us a great opportunity to now develop even new, cool ways and engagement tools.
Yep.
George, do you have any final thoughts on this?
I would just say, yeah, I mean, all these key learnings that, and it's a lot of work. I mean, doing virtual, I mean, I would say almost more work than the actual live event. And all those key learnings that we're going to do, we're going to move those forward into 21. Even when live events do come back up, we believe that there'll be a hybrid approach for that scale in creating those memorable experience and continue to deliver those memorable experience to our fans and communities.
Can you develop what you mean by a hybrid approach?
Well, I mean, we obviously will have a live component and we'll have a presence there, but I would believe that there'll be some type of virtual experience as an extension of that live experience for that scale.
And is this through a new technology, hopefully, or something?
We're still learning, right? We're looking at ways to engage virtual from a B2C standpoint, creating, working with companies on creating experiences that are virtual that can engage and with our community, and they can learn from it. So basically, to help advance the community and have some fun.
Well, and I'll jump in again and just say, Intel, it's interesting because, again, overlapping traditional and esports again. We actually have a sports division that works with the NBA. It's worked with the Olympics in bringing essentially courtside experiences of those games to people who do it remotely. Can we apply some of those same technologies here? And it does require like putting cameras all over the stadium so that, the person who's viewing remotely can say, I'd like to see what the angle looks like from, a different seat in the arena. So there's an opportunity now, again, to overlap. And, I said traditional sports sort of stole some of the technology and experience from esports. Now, potentially esports might have an opportunity to kind of go the other way and steal some of those back from the traditional sports that we've been developing.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be new technology too. I mean, we're using existing technology on new usages. Obviously players are playing remotely, and to deliver that same fan experience, we are sending gear to these players so they can capture them while they're playing at homes. Using Intel technology, like our NUC systems, and using a camera from RealSense, we can actually capture the players and deliver that fan experience, the similar sound experience when it was live.
I mean, we're all waiting to see how augmented reality and virtual reality are going to affect esports in the coming years. What do you think is going to happen in the next 10 years? I mean, it's a very broad question, but what are you looking forward to in this next decade to come?
10 years is a long time. Esports years, it's like, times 5. No, I mean, look, we're already seeing, right, things like virtual sets make its way into all of content production, including esports, right? So you're seeing that come in again, faster CPUs, faster processors, more computing power, faster bandwidth speeds, just puts more and more and more bigger screens will just only further blend that experience as the quality gets there. So right, when you think about the effects of something like a mixed reality or virtual reality, it's when, not if. Whether that's in 10 years, everything tends to take longer than what you project. But these things are coming. So it's bigger, richer experiences, again, not just to game, but to be part of that community and to consume it on an ongoing basis is really where how we see this all coming to life.
And just to prove it's live, we got the sirens in the background there. But I'll add to what Craig said.
I'm from New York.
I do think, that bigger, richer. I would love to see some evolution where, we're starting to see this with the battle royale model, right? And that was one of the things that actually Intel and ESL sort of, we've experimented with from time to time. We brought like the first battle royale PUBG tournament, a few years ago. And it was interesting watching a layout where there was, 80 players, 20 different teams of 4 people competing in that. And I'm looking forward to the time when it's not always 5v5. I think it changes the competitive makeup. It changes the strategy and might make it more exciting where, you might have teams as large as 10, 20 players, and it's going to be a game, and the infrastructure is going to be there where nothing's slow, but it's going to change the strategy. It's going to change the makeup. It's going to make it so much more. Again, we'll just add some excitement and interest with the teamwork required, the roles that can be played, and the inclusiveness of having a larger team. So I'm looking forward to that too, where that infrastructure allows for larger teams, more numbers of players, and again, just more interaction, if you will.
Well, I'm still waiting for StarCraft 2v2, but that's just on a personal basis. George, any final thoughts, George, on this question?
No, I think Craig and Troy answered it right. I mean, 10 years from now, we don't know what the next big title and what that title brings, but it's all about what we are as Intel. We want to look at delivering the best technologies and working with ESL and integrate that and delivering that to the fans. That's bottom line.
Okay, brilliant. Well, guys, unfortunately for me at least, time is running out, and I know you guys have a big, busy day ahead of you, as always, I'm sure. And so I'm going to say, if you guys have any final thoughts, any final words you'd like to share with us, this is the moment.
Yeah, just it's been a wild journey these last 20 years of pioneering this, and it really takes great partnerships together of what Intel and ESL have been able to do across the entire sport has been landmark. So for us as ESL, we say thank you, and we look forward to another 20 years seeing where we end up.
Perfect. Guys, anything from Intel quickly?
Yeah, I would just add, I think ESL has been a great partner in this, and we couldn't have done it without them and the partnership they've provided. I'd also just say, to all the players out there, keep playing. Your involvement, your, viewership is what keeps this whole thing going. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you want to do. Tell us what you dream about, because that's what will help us develop the right technologies to improve and enrich, esports and gaming overall.
And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, because, we like to tell our story, and, me and Craig, and we all lived through this, and be able to have the opportunity to tell our story. This is always, something that highlighted my day. So I want to thank you.
Well, George, Troy, and Craig, thank you once more, gentlemen, for being here today. It was a real pleasure and honor to talk to you once more. I hope you have a great day. And to everyone watching us, guys, thanks a ton for joining us. And hopefully stay tuned for some more from le Grand Festival Gaming ici en France. À bientôt. Merci.